we have gone so far away from understanding food at its heart, food at its very basic, what's in it, what are those things doing for us, but also from being able to listen to what, Fred Provenza, our friend, calls nutritional wisdom of the body. So our signals have become so muddied with all the stuff out there in the grocery stores and the advertising telling you what to buy, telling you what's healthy, the Eat Well plate telling you that this is healthy, the government, national guidelines for America telling you. So all this noise is in the heads. And so people don't know how to listen to their own body, to what makes them feel good, to what makes them alert versus not alert, gives them gastrointestinal stress versus not. These things, we have those abilities. And I know Fred Provenza writes about animals having them, and people could have them if we hadn't polluted the environment so much with the noise. It very interesting. And I guess by now your listeners are thinking, what does this have to do with her book? And at some point, hopefully that will become clear. But it's about understanding what each person needs, and that the same diet cannot be good for you, for me, for everybody around the world, for people in different countries, as you say, which is another argument I make in the book about why it's not vegetarianism or even veganism that I am railing against or that I am trying to discredit. What I am discrediting is the idea that the same diet can be good for everybody.
Right.
Same plant-based, balanced, that empty signifier, right? Balanced and healthy diet can be good for everyone, because it can't. And there are countless examples of this, but you just have to take something like vitamin A. 50% of us have the ability, or about 50% have the ability to convert vitamin A, or the form of it in plants, beta carotene, into the vitamin A that our bodies need. If you're one of the other 50%, which my daughter just found out she is, and you're relying on carrots for your vitamin A, you're going to suffer. So you need to get it from liver or from eggs or some sort of animal source food. It's just one example. These examples multiply, and that's why you find that some people can thrive on a sort of mostly plants diet and other people can't. Other people have to thrive on a mostly meat diet, or even an all meat diet, and then there are lots of people in between, because we're also genetically different. We have different ability to use the vitamins that we ingest. And to me, that seems like a very, very simple statement. And yet policymakers seem to be pushing this whole plant-based diet for the world kind of agenda. They don't have any idea about nutrition and about what will happen to bodies if that is actually ever comes to fruition.
Well, one of the problems is Bill Gates doesn't have any idea about medicine or nutrition, and look at the amount of influence he has, as many people.
How did a software guy get to be king of the world and tell us about all this stuff, hey?
Well, the thing is, someone said wisely once, I saw a meme going around that was terribly true. They said, Bill Gates can't keep viruses out of his own computers. What makes you think he can help us? And that's too damn true. And I think for the listeners, if you haven't listened to or read the book Controligarchs by Seamus Bruner, it is a mind-blowing expose of these oligarchs. And boy, I'll tell you, he opens the can of worms on all of them. And he even really gives you some psychological profiling. And here's one of the key things about Bill Gates that I thought was so fascinating that he exposed. When Bill Gates was a young man, he was obsessed with a specific game, Monopoly.
Right.
He was a Monopoly fanatic. And lo and behold, if you study the work of Arnold Mindell, who is the founder of process psychology and the author of many excellent books I have in my library, Arnold Mindell says you can pretty much tell about 75% of the time what a child will end up doing for their living by what their greatest passions are and what their vision for themselves was between age 5 and 7. And Bill Gates was fanatic about winning at Monopoly. And here he is still doing it.
Moving those pieces around, taking that land.
We've touched on this, but why do you feel people are fixated on diets and not paying attention to themselves? I'll never forget, I saw this interview, and you might have seen this. It was Barry Sears Atkins, and one other of the diet experts. And they were on a TV show. And those three guys literally got into a fight with each other. They were yelling and screaming at each other. And it was like almost going to fist fight. And I'm watching this. I'm like, this is just such a great example of why fixed diets don't work. These guys cannot even hold an adult conversation. Oh, it was Ornish, Dean Ornish.
Oh, Ornish. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah,
It was
imagine,
Sears,
yeah.
Ornish, and Atkins going at each other like dogs in a fight. With my students, I go, look, if you look at research on diets, no matter where you go, I don't care if it's the keto diet or the paleo diet or the Ornish diet or all the way back to the Pritikin, doesn't matter. I mean, there's tons of research on these diets. And I say to my students, I've looked at thousands of these research papers, and here's exactly how they all play out. X percentage of them did well. X percentage of them saw no difference, and X percentage of them got worse. Okay, now you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say, okay, if you look at 1,000 research papers on all sorts of different diets, there's always people that do well. There's always people that don't notice any difference. There's always people that get worse, which means in every single case, the diet was never right for everybody in the study group, whether it was 10 people or 10,000. Yet here they are pumping these diets like they're the one-all savior of the world. And I'm like, where is common sense in all of this stuff? So my question to you, having looked into this, is what is it that you think is causing people to be so fixated on diets? I have my own answer, but I'm going to let you tell me what you think it is.
One of the answers, let's set aside the researchers here and the Ornishes of the world and the Harvard Business Schools. Let's set them aside for a second because that's a different driver. I think with individuals right now, they're fixated on diet and they become so passionate in arguing for their particular diet because we have a world that's dominated by identity politics now. So diet is just one of those things that people feel they've built their whole self around. There are other things and we know what they are, the sexual identity and
religion, political identity.
Political identity. It's not just something you do or you think anymore. It's who you are. Leara Keith says, she's the great ex-vegan who wrote the book, The Vegetarian Myth, 10 years ago. Continues to speak about this, a really smart, good, compassionate woman. She realizes, because she was one of these people, that veganism had become her identity and she couldn't hear information either from other people or even from her own body. Said, this isn't working for you, dear. You better stop. It took her so long to realize that because it was like giving up herself. So I think that that's one of the problems. And there are some diets which are more prone to that identity link than others. And I would say veganism is one of them. Then we look at, okay, why do the researchers and the institutions and the doctors get so fixated? I think it has to do with the fact that round about 1950, epidemiology became an industry.
That's a good point.
Started with Ansel Keys' epidemiological studies. It became a way of looking at nutrition that dominated all universities and all research environments. And each bit of epidemiology became associated with a given institution. So if you're Harvard and you've been doing epidemiology for 40 years, that says plant-based is best, which is usually what comes out of Harvard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best for everybody, and it always gives you less cancer, and it always gives you less of everything, right?
Including health.
Yeah, including. You cannot produce
go
any
against it.
Research. You don't get funding. The intellectual environment will not permit it. And then you got somebody like Loma Linda. Loma Linda,
Seventh-day Adventist.
Seventh-day Adventist. So they're producing research which is heavily oriented towards plant-based diets because they believe that as part of their religion. They can't produce anything else. It just wouldn't be possible. It's this institutional sort of fixatedness, which is preventing people from accepting arguments on the other side. And it's very rare to find people that cross the aisle, as it were, and who can admit that there's some good things about this diet and some good things about that diet. But there are deficiencies in each of those. And so we need to be cognizant of those. This is the kind of debate you would expect grown-ups to have, but I think the system doesn't allow it. Personally, I think that nutritional epidemiology is dead in terms of its ability to tell us anything useful, and it should be abolished. I honestly think that. I think it does more harm than good. I think it confuses the general population because every day there's a new study coming out telling you whether avocados are going to make you live forever, or this week then it's dates, and then it's eating
It's
10
constant on the internet every day.
everywhere. And none of it, or let's say 99% of it, and actually none of it that I have ever looked at has any value whatsoever. I mean, John Ioannidis from Stanford famously said that 80% of those kind of studies give you the wrong answer. I would say it's half. It's more than that, sorry. I would say it's closer to 90 or plus. And therefore, I think it's a defunct, it just needs to be finished. And we should be relying on other forms of research to understand the impact that food has on us and what we should be eating. And I think that research needs to be much more inside out, as it were. What does the body need and what do different foods provide? And let's test those and let's see in lab situations or experimental situations how that works.